Some say she's possessed, but could she be blessed? Now, a unique spiritual and scientific journey of discovery will try to solve the mystery.
If we can find out an organic cause, it will certainly be a landmark.
Can modern science or religious ritual find a cure for the girl who cries blood? This is 13-year-old Twinkle Dwivedi. In many ways, she's a typical Indian teenager. When she's not praying at her local Hindu temple, she hangs out with friends in the neighborhood.
Twinkle is not the kind of girl who will sit at home and study. She's not like that. She's a tomboy. She wants to play and fight.
The Dwivedi home is in the northern Indian city of Lucknow. It's famed for its Muslim architecture and is often called the Constantinople of India. Twinkle's house is in a quiet suburb a few miles from downtown. Her dad works on the railways and is often away, so Twinkle's mom manages the home. Nandini juggles the responsibility of running a beauty parlor and raising her kids. And with Twinkle, it's not easy.
I have 4 daughters. The youngest is Twinkle. 3 are absolutely fine. But Twinkle suffers from this problem. I don't understand what I should do.
For the last 2 years, Twinkle Dwivedi has reported spontaneous bleeding from her eyes, hands, head, and elsewhere on her body.
She can start bleeding when she's watching TV or something. It can happen anytime.
Mostly I bleed from my head and the hands, the feet, the chest, the throat, the ears, the nose, the eyes, from everywhere.
Twinkle's shocking bleeding has meant that for nearly 2 years, she's been unable to go to school. But remarkably, there's little pain. There's no visible source. There are no cuts on her skin.
What I can't understand is that she doesn't get injured for her to start bleeding. If she got hurt and started to bleed, I'd understand that. But she's not getting hurt for the bleeding to start.
And when the blood's washed off, it's as if it never happened. These episodes terrified Twinkle's family. When they began 2 years ago, they immediately rushed her to their family physician, Dr. Siddiqui.
A lot of the time, the whole family starts to cry and scream, "Doctor, save her." What do we do? My sister is going to die. So I told them to take her to a hospital.
Crying tears of blood is not unknown to medical science. A rare condition called hemolacria can produce tears partially composed of blood. But Twinkle's bleeding isn't restricted to her eyes.
Even after consulting 2 other doctors, an ENT surgeon and a gastroenterologist, we still couldn't make out where the blood was from.
Siddiqui referred Twinkle's case to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIMS.
The best hospital in India is considered to be AIMS. Mommy has taken her there, but she didn't get any positive response. They said if she is bleeding, let her bleed. There is no problem. She's just looking for attention.
For the most part, Twinkle's bleeding has simply been dismissed.
I feel very bad that nobody is helping her. But all the places they have been to, everyone has passed the buck from one person to the next.
The doctors look at her and turn their backs. If it was their child, do you think they would turn their backs? No, they wouldn't.
Now, after 2 years, Twinkle and her family still have no answers and are disillusioned about the ability of doctors in India to cure her.
If you ask me whether I have faith in Indian doctors, I would say I have no faith. Not even 1%.
They've been told that medically, Twinkle's bleeding cannot be explained. In the neighborhood where Twinkle lives, the rumor mill is in overdrive. Everyone has an opinion on what's causing her tears of blood.
You can call it a miracle. I have never seen or heard anything like it before.
Friends say many things. Some say that physically she is not so strong. Some say a bad woman has been cast. Some say it's a ghost.
Superstition is so strong here that Twinkle and her mother have visited a local mystic for guidance.
ऐसा है कि ये थोड़ी सी बाहरी हवाएं हैं जो शरीर का खून धीरे धीरे जैसे एक पीड़ा होता है वो पंजा लगाता है और छोड़ देता है उसके बाद जहां जहां पे उसके पंजे लगते वहां से ब्लड आता है लेकिन ये बाहरी चीजें हैं ये पूरी जड़ से नहीं खत्म होती हैं
According to the mystic, Twinkle is possessed.
तो कोई ऐसा व्यक्ति है जो केवल खून ही पीता है तो वो अपना हिस्सा पी लेता है बाकी वो छोड़ देता उबालता है तो वो बाहर निकल आता है
She tells them to pray and make offerings in the temple as often as they can.
The offerings at the temple have not helped. It's not that I haven't done what is asked of me. I haven't neglected it. I've done it. But her condition hasn't improved by going to the temple or by dispelling the spirits. They haven't left.
But Twinkle's bleeding bears an uncanny resemblance to another supernatural phenomena. The mysterious appearance of the wounds Jesus suffered at his crucifixion on the hands, head, and feet of others is known as stigmata. Though Christianity is a minority religion in India, less than 2% of the country's population is Catholic. There are still more than 17 million followers. Today, Twinkle is on her way to ask Gerald Matthias, the Bishop of Lucknow, if stigmata is the reason she cries tears of blood.
मैंने आपके ऑफिस में देखा था वो फोटो तो ऐसे ही मेरे साथ होता है
इसके पहले कहीं फोटो देखा ईसा मसीह का प्रभु यीशु का जीसस क्राइस्ट का फोटो कभी देखा है कौन सा फोटो देखा
जो ऐसा हाँ
जाने के पहले थोड़ा चर्च
But the bishop doesn't believe Twinkle's bleeding has anything to do with Christ's suffering on the cross.
तो इसलिए आप लोगों को जो ये ट्विंकल को जो परेशानी है ये तुरंत हमें नहीं सोचना चाहिए कि प्रभु ईसा मसीह के द्वारा ये हो रहा है कि उसको प्रभु यीशु क्रिस्त की खुलकर जानकारी नहीं है और प्रभु यीशु क्रिस्त के दर्शन नहीं होते उनको और उनके दुख भोग में वो शामिल नहीं हो रही वैसा हमारी राय यह है पर्सनल ओपिनियन है कि इस केस में इस ट्विंकल के केस में शायद ये स्टिग्माटा नहीं है
He prays for her. Then miraculously, just moments after her blessing, Twinkle bleeds in front of the bishop.
कैसे हो अभी क्या कर रहे थे क्या कुछ किया
नहीं दरवाजा बंद कर रहे थे ना वॉशरूम गए थे तो दरवाजा खोले जब बाहर निकले तो मम्मी ने देखा हमको नहीं पता था कि निकल जाएगा मम्मी ने कहा निकल रहा है।
कुछ दर्द है?
नहीं।
Twinkle's spontaneous bleeding fails to impress the bishop.
आजकल तो ज़्यादातर सर से ही हो रहा है।
This is clearly not a case of mystical experience. A mystic will be in a trance, as it were. But this is not the case with Twinkle. Twinkle, she behaves and is as a normal girl. Absolutely, how do we explain? I personally am not an expert. So you live in hope, huh? Huh? ठीक है, Twinkle, you have to keep smiling, huh? ठीक है.
Their meeting has been unsuccessful. Nandini's daughter bleeds and the bishop isn't able to offer any explanation why. Catholicism can't help them, so Twinkle and her mother decide to concentrate on their own religion, Hinduism. They've been to temples in Lucknow, but now they decide to go on a pilgrimage to one of the holiest places in India. There they'll observe cleansing rituals on the banks of the sacred Ganges. They'll also visit a famous Ayurvedic center in the hope that Twinkle will get treatment. Their journey starts with a 13-hour train ride.
We'll make offerings to God. I'll make sure Twinkle makes offerings to God. And we'll pray that my child gets better.
Twinkle and her mother travel to Haridwar, over 300 miles northwest of Lucknow. It's one of the 7 holiest sites in Hinduism and a place of pilgrimage.
Twinkle believes in God. She has a lot of faith. So we will pray and seek medical help to cure her. Sometimes you need to do both.
Presenting the Samsung LED TV.
And dreams of becoming a movie star. The World's Smallest Girl, next on National Geographic.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and the express train is pulling in at its destination. Twinkle and her mother arrive in Haridwar as celebrations for Holi, the annual festival of colors, are well underway. The festival celebrates the start of spring and commemorates a Hindu legend where good triumphs over evil. Tradition has it that people throw brightly colored powders over each other and generally go a bit wild in the streets. Today, Haridwar is a riot of color. But Nandini and Twinkle haven't traveled here for a holiday. They've come for a spiritual cleansing in the Ganges. In Hindi, the name Haridwar stands for Gateway to God. It's believed that bathing here in the Ganges washes away sins. The sacred waters free the soul from the cycle of birth and reincarnation and guarantee immortality. Immersing yourself at Haridwar's Ghat during a religious festival is especially potent. And tens of thousands travel to the city each year to do just that. Twinkle and Nandini begin the ritual by praying at a temple at the Harkipuri Ghat, the sacred heart of the city. Next, they give flowers and candles, called diyas, to the Ganges, offerings that represent the soul and its blossoming purity. Twinkle is ready to immerse herself in the sacred waters. it's time for her cleansing. As she and her mother pray, preparations for the arti begin. It's a Hindu ritual, which is often called the ceremony of lights. Amid chanting, bell ringing, and prayers, flaming torches are offered up. It's a symbolic gesture that asks for the light that illuminates the Lord to light up the vision of the faithful. Now that they've embraced all of these cleansing rituals, Twinkle and her mother wait for a sign that she is cured.
Her eyes started to go red. I kept looking at her. She asked me what I was looking at. I know that when her eyes go red, she may start bleeding. Then it started.
Sometimes it hurts, but today it doesn't. But it hurts a little bit when I wash.
Twinkle's pain is often shared by her mother. Not physically, but emotionally.
अरे बहुत परेशानी होती है मुझे, बहुत तकलीफ होती है। तकलीफ होती है मुझे, बहुत दर्द होता है मुझे, उसकी लगता है इसका। दर्द हो रहा है आँखों में।
When the blood's washed off, there's no redness or irritation. In fact, there's no evidence that suggests that Twinkle has just bled from her eyes.
Sometimes I believe we'll find a cure, but we're broken now. We've lost faith.
It's the next morning in Haridwar. Twinkle has been granted an appointment at Patanjali Yogpit, one of the most advanced Ayurvedic centers in the world. If religion can't cure her, maybe a more holistic approach is needed. Ayurveda is an ancient Indian holistic medical practice that combines diet, yoga, massage, and herbal remedies to maintain health. According to ancient Hindu texts, the health of the human body is governed by 3 elements, or doshas. These are the vat, spirit, pit, bile, and kaph, phlegm.
ये शरीर को पूरा जो बॉडी चलता है तो ये 3 चीज़ों से चलता है, तो ये 3 चीज़ों को बैलेंस होने से जो भी डिजीज़ है वो ठीक हो सकती है, चाहे वो कैंसर हो, चाहे वो एड्स हो, चाहे और हार्ट की प्रॉब्लम हो, चाहे वो अर्थराइटिस हो।
To make a diagnosis, Acharya Balkrisha checks each of Twinkle's doshas. Acharya identifies a problem with Twinkle's pit, her bile. He thinks it's the source of her bleeding and is ready to admit her as a patient.
मैं उसको भी एक चैलेंज की तरह से करना चाहता हूँ, तो उसके लिए तो आपको, क्योंकि मैं सोच रहा था ब्लीडिंग वगैरह होती है तो पता नहीं किस टाइप के है, क्या है, थोड़ा सा रहता है भ्रम। मेरे को भी कोई इतनी चिंता नहीं, इतना सीरियस कुछ ऐसा तो है नहीं कि इसको एकदम इमरजेंसी केस है, तो इसको आराम से यहाँ रुक करके करो तो ज़्यादा अच्छा है।
But his offer to treat her doesn't get the reaction he expects.
तो फिर मैं कहूँ कि यहाँ रहना है तो फिर क्यों नहीं रहेगी? न रहेगी। मैं कहूँगा तेरे को ठीक होना है ना, तो ठीक होने के लिए रहना पड़े तो और रह लेगी वो तो।
Twinkle and her mother refuse the offer.
क्योंकि बहुत लोगों को
We've shown her to so many people, so many people.
पास तो जाकर ऐसा लगा जैसे कि
And with the doctor here, it felt as if he took it very lightly.
में लिया इन्होंने।
Another prime factor in their decision to move on is that a top American blood specialist is flying to India to meet her.
I want to meet the American doctor. I have greater faith in foreign doctors, not the doctors here. I have already met Ayurvedic doctors and they've given me medicines, but it hasn't changed a thing.
Twinkle is putting her faith in Dr. George Buchanan, a world-renowned pediatric hematologist who's flown over 9,000 miles to investigate her unique condition.
The news reports that I heard about Twinkle were just so intriguing because of the unusual nature of her bleeding. Crying tears of blood, having bleeding appearing spontaneously on her scalp, on her palms, under her eyes. It's not recorded in medical history to my knowledge and doesn't fit with any known bleeding disorder.
Dr. George Buchanan will base his investigation at one of Mumbai's top hospitals, Jaslok. There he'll be working with consultant hematologist Dr. Antia. Together they'll try to solve the extraordinary puzzle of Twinkle's bleeding.
But the sites which I've mentioned are totally unusual. Scalp, eyes, unheard of, undocumented.
About 7% of human body weight is made up of blood. In adults, this amounts to 4 or 5 quarts. Blood has 4 main components. Red blood cells carry oxygen. White blood cells defend the body against infection, and platelets help the blood to clot. These 3 are carried within the 4th, a protein-rich fluid called plasma. The heart pumps this blood through an intricate network of tubes called blood vessels, which keep it contained within our bodies.
So there's only 3 ways one can have bleeding: something wrong with the blood vessels, something wrong with the platelets, or something wrong with the proteins or factors in the blood that make the blood clot. And so it just doesn't seem medically possible for bleeding to come through intact skin where there's no evidence of any skin abnormality or damage to the skin. And so trying to get an understanding of the cause here is extremely important.
That afternoon, Nandini and Twinkle arrive in Mumbai. Their appointment to meet the doctors is scheduled for tomorrow.
Seeing the actual bleeding, given its very unusual location and nature, I think will be extremely important for us.
As a precaution, Dr. Buchanan has asked that Twinkle and her mother stay at his hotel. If Twinkle has an episode, Dr. Buchanan wants to be on the scene as quickly as possible. That night at 1 a.m., Dr. Buchanan gets an emergency call to room 503. 8 hours ahead of schedule, he meets Twinkle for the very first time.
Can someone, I guess we don't see anybody translate, I guess we can't. Let me just look right now. Yeah. Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling okay? Yeah.
अब दर्द हो रहा है.
Where is the pain now? Where does it hurt?
कहाँ दर्द हो रहा है? On the back of her head.
Yeah, wow. I'm just gonna look, okay? I'm not gonna hurt you. There's what looks like blood here. I'm just looking for a wound of some kind, but I don't really see any, an opening in the skin. Usually when somebody has bleeding like this, one can see a cut or a scratch or something that started it. It's not clear to me. I've not seen this before. Do we have one of those glass slides? It's just a little piece of glass. I'm not going to cut you or hurt you or anything with this, but I just want to touch this against the top of your head.
Testing the substance on Twinkle's scalp will help Dr. Buchanan's investigation.
Put this somewhere here.
Next, he collects another sample using a different technique.
This is saline, and what I want to do is get a little dab of the blood and save it so we can look at the blood cells and measure them.
Storing the sample in saline prevents the blood from drying out.
So this is basically giving us a suspension of red blood cells, and so the laboratory ought to be able to do some testing determining the type of blood.
With the evidence in hand, Dr. Buchanan gives his initial reaction to what he's just witnessed.
It's very unusual. With a lack of any, I mean, I guess it looks, clearly it looks like blood to me. It's partially clotted. I think it's going to turn out to be blood. I am not aware of any medical condition that I can explain scientifically as a hematologist, knowing about blood clotting, that would explain this.
Business Bites. Take advantage of loyalty programs where you can earn free nights for stay. Next, meet Jo T. She's the size of a 6-month-old baby, walks on 2 broken legs, and dreams of becoming a movie star. The world's smallest girl, next on National Geographic. Tomorrow, we found a place where the big fish play. Whoa! But hooking one will take your luckiest lure and just the right tug or two.
Holy mackerel, look at that jump.
Okay, settle in and let the battle begin. 3 hours later, let's reel in this behemoth. Because catches this big are made for Mondays. Hooked Monster Fish, tomorrow at 10 on Nat Geo.
Analysis of the 2 samples Dr. Buchanan collected from Twinkle's scalp might help solve the mystery of her bleeding. And for Nandini, the tests he's commissioning represent a real breakthrough.
I'll give you some specimens of blood.
Twinkle bled in front of Dr. George. He was prepared for it. This has never happened before. Such a test has never been done by anyone else.
After last night's bleeding, Dr. Buchanan is eager to begin his official evaluation into Twinkle's dilemma. He begins by reviewing her records.
The medical history, that is the most important part of working up and evaluating a patient with a bleeding disorder. The tests are helpful. The tests sometimes can be diagnostic, but it's the history, the location of the bleeding, the severity, the frequency, when it began, what brings it on, what's done about it, that kind of leads us in the right direction.
Next, he talks with Twinkle and Nandini about the bleeding.
Ask a number of questions to learn about Twinkle's general health and overall health her entire life.
तो जुलाई 2007 से पहले ही पूछताछ करेंगे ताकि उनको पता चले कि ट्विंकल की जनरल हेल्थ कैसी थी.
When she was a young girl growing up, was her
He's looking for details that will help him uncover the cause of the condition.
Weak and tired. Were there other problems with her health prior to July 2007?
कभी-कभी उसके नोज से ब्लीडिंग होती थी.
Any problem with her vision or hearing when she was growing up?
नहीं.
Oh, okay. How about her stomach?
It's a lengthy process, and it's repeated by Dr. Antia.
During her menses, she has to use about 8 pads. That is very heavy.
Twinkle's history of nosebleeds and heavy periods is significant. They're both common symptoms of a problem with platelets, one of the 4 main components that make up blood. Platelets are cells that form the primary plug when there's an injury to a blood vessel. They stick together or aggregate at the site of the injury, forming a clot to prevent blood from escaping. If there are too few of these cells or they don't function properly, it means that the blood clots less effectively. If Twinkle has a platelet problem, it might explain her unusual bleeding. To find out if her platelets are functioning properly, a small incision is made on her skin, and the time it takes for blood to clot is monitored.
Normal person should stop bleeding in about 5 minutes or 7 minutes. If she continues to bleed prolonged, that itself will prove that she's got a functional platelet disorder.
It's a simple but effective test.
Oh, the clot is forming.
It really has. I think so. Yes, sir.
There you
it's
are.
stopped.
7 minutes, exactly. It's normal.
The result suggests that there's nothing wrong with Twinkle's platelets. But to double check, the specialists will perform a full range of sophisticated tests on Twinkle's blood. Jaslock's technicians will look for any evidence of abnormalities. though Dr. Buchanan isn't sure that these tests will answer the key question.
Where does it come from? It seems like it would have to come seeping through the skin of the scalp or through the tissues in the eyes, and I'm just not aware of any medical condition that would lead to this.
Medically speaking, it shouldn't be possible for Twinkle to bleed from her scalp without there being any sort of opening.
What I'm looking for in the middle of her scalp is to see if there's any cuts that would explain these events of bleeding from her scalp.
He thoroughly scrutinizes her skin, limbs, and joints.
Does this hurt when I just touch your knee? Basic impression of the physical exam, really, it's quite normal. I really didn't find anything that suggests some kind of underlying, deep-seated, generalized problem that might be associated with bleeding. And listen to your heart a little bit, just right here.
Dr. Buchanan's investigation is about to take an unexpected turn.
Your heart sounds very good. Twinkle's very, very unusual bleeding really is a mystery and makes me suspect that this could be something that's been called factitious bleeding. The bleeding occurs as a result of the patient or a family member putting the blood there or causing a lesion or scratch or cut to bring on the bleeding. Yet the physical examination doesn't really support that because there's no evidence, despite the bleeding from her scalp.
The doctor begins to question everything about Twinkle's case.
Is it Twinkle's blood? We're not sure of that right now. We didn't really see the bleeding start, and so we really don't know how it began, how the blood got there.
To find out, Dr. Buchanan has to confirm that the substance he took from Twinkle's scalp is actually blood.
By looking at this under the microscope, I can say for sure there are red blood cells and white blood cells there. So it's blood. The question is it Twinkle's blood?
To answer that, he needs the results of the other sample he collected, Twinkle's test tube. Its contents are being analyzed to identify what type or group the blood is, but the results won't be in for another hour. In the meantime, Doctors Buchanan and Antia are about to get the results of the other tests they commissioned yesterday. These will tell them if Twinkle has any defects or deficiencies in her red blood cells, proteins, or platelets.
The first page really is basically a series of screening tests, including some fairly ones looking for unusual conditions, and they're all normal. They're all normal. Yeah.
But page 2 tells a different story.
So here we are finding abnormalities in the platelet aggregation study.
Twinkle's test results have shown that she does have a problem with her blood, but it's a minor one. Her platelets aren't sticking together properly.
On the basis of these tests, I can certainly say that she has a bleeding problem. What I cannot understand on the basis of these tests, I still cannot explain her symptoms.
Taking an aspirin tablet 2 days earlier would cause the abnormalities that we're seeing on this test. It's not going to cause Twinkle's unusual bleeding manifestations. So it does make me very suspicious that this is bleeding that's been brought on purposefully in some way by Twinkle and or her mother.
Now the doctors wonder if the result of the test tube sample will tell them the answer. They know Twinkle has a rare blood type, AB positive.
This is AB positive. And the reason why
this would be consistent with the blood from her scalp being actually her blood. Not absolute proof, but would be consistent.
Dr. Buchanan can't rule out the possibility that the blood isn't Twinkle's.
I mean, right now it's very unclear. I think the mother's blood group is still going to be important, and I agree she's unlikely to be AB positive. But if she were the same blood group, then I think that would still raise the question that the blood could come from the mother.
But before the doctors can test Nandini's blood, that night, back at the hotel, Twinkle bleeds again.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's happening here?
हम टीवी देख रहे थे तब एक यहाँ से निकला फिर इसमें दिखना बंद हो गया था फिर यहाँ से निकला फिर
How about your eyes? Do they hurt at all or burn?
आँख के अंदर ब्लड है ना इससे थोड़ी जलन हो रही है.
Dr. Buchanan takes a closer look.
Do you mind if I kind of put my finger around your eye and just to kind of check it? Would that be okay? Okay. I'm just going to look here.
It's the first time he's witnessed Twinkle's tears of blood.
Okay, sorry. Can you look way up here at the ceiling for me? Look way up. That's good. Thank you. Okay.
He's looking to see if the blood has come from her tear ducts, a rare condition called hemolacria.
Okay, sorry. So it looks like the bleeding sort of comes from outside the actual eye rather than from the eyes. It's no real pattern. It's kind of blotted in.
For the first time, Dr. Buchanan openly questions Twinkle about where the blood is coming from.
Do you have any bleeding anywhere else right now? Nowhere else on your body, on your skin, on your chest, on your back? So how do you think this happened?
I don't.
You don't know. So you didn't make it happen. Did you put the blood there? On your hands and on your face?
No.
Nandini doesn't like the questions.
आपको ऐसा लगता है कि किसी ने लगाया है?
I don't know. I think that is a possibility. Yes.
Mondays, you never know what you're gonna hook, and that's the best part. Hooked, Mondays at 10 on Nat Geo.
Dr. Buchanan is suspicious that Twinkle's tears of blood are being faked. The next morning, he confronts Nandini.
I have to ask you one very important, difficult question. Are you causing Twinkle's bleeding? Are you causing the bleeding, putting blood on her? Are you responsible for this?
नहीं, हम अपनी बच्चे पे ब्लीडिंग हम नहीं करवाते हैं, ना हम उसके ऊपर कोई ब्लड लगाते हैं.
Then for the first time, Dr. Buchanan meets Twinkle away from her mother.
Another question I have, and this is an important one. Have you brought on or caused the bleeding yourself? Do you make yourself bleed?
No.
You're sure?
Yes.
You've never done anything to bring on or cause bleeding?
No.
Okay, I had to ask that question. You understand that why I'm asking the question?
तो अब मैं पूछती हूँ जॉर्ज की तरफ से क्या आप ब्लीडिंग करवाती हो या खून लगाती हो? नो. आपको क्या लगता है कि हम खून लगाते हैं? तो अगर आपको ये लगता है तो मुझे आपसे इलाज नहीं करवानी है. क्या नहीं करवानी है? मुझे आपसे इलाज नहीं करवाना है. मुझे ऐसी मदद नहीं करवानी है जो ऐसे क्वेश्चन पूछे. मम्मी को इस क्वेश्चन में शायद ना गुस्सा आए, मुझे बहुत जल्दी गुस्सा आता है.
ट्विंकल, मेरी बात सुनो. पहले मेरी बात सुनो. तुमको ठीक नहीं होना है. देखो सब लोग कह रहे हैं ना कि तुम झूठ बोल रही, तो उन्हें बताओ वो डॉक्टर इसलिए पूछ रहे हैं कि उन्होंने देखा ना तुमको कि तुम्हारे आ रहे सर से ब्लड निकल रहा था, कल आँख से ब्लड निकल रहा था, उन्होंने देखा। लेकिन उनसे सारे दुनिया के सारे लोग पूछेंगे आपने देखा, तो वो क्या जवाब देंगे? वो जवाब नहीं देंगे, उसका जवाब तुम दोगी। तुम्हें साफ कहना चाहिए ठीक है आप सब तरफ कैमरे लगा दीजिए और मुझे बैठा दीजिए, और आप जैसे दुकानों में देखा है कैमरा कि हाँ शॉप में कौन आ रहा है कौन जा रहा है, ऐसी कैमरा फिट कर दीजिए आप मेरे सामने, और आप पूरी दुनिया देखती रहे मुझे कि हाँ हम ब्लड खुद निकाल रहे हैं या ब्लड अपने आप से आ रहा है।
After a few minutes, Twinkle is calm enough to see Dr. Buchanan.
I'm sorry, Twinkle. I want you to know, first of all, that as your doctor, I want to help you. I really do. I've never seen anyone who has bleeding like you have. I'm not accusing you or saying that you're doing it. But I have to ask, as your doctor, to try to help and make this better. I had to ask that question, whether you were doing it to yourself.
It's so...
It's 7 a.m. the following morning. Nandini has agreed to have her blood tested to confirm that the blood on Twinkle isn't hers. Dr. Antia is overseeing the process. She's A negative. The AB positive blood Dr. Buchanan found on Twinkle can't be from Nandini. But does this mean Dr. Antia can explain where Twinkle's tears of blood came from?
That's the only answer I cannot give you. The explanation of her symptoms on the basis of these lab tests, that is something which I have to say sorry, I can't answer that question.
But Dr. Buchanan thinks his investigation has uncovered enough information for a diagnosis to be made.
So I'm ready now to kind of explain to you my opinions.
Back at the hotel, he tells them what he thinks.
Who really wants to understand Twinkle's problem and to help her. Now, there's two possibilities as to what's causing this. One possibility is that you have Twinkle's syndrome, totally unique medical problem that no one else has had before, and we'll name it after you if we can prove that. That's one possibility. But in order to determine that, we're going to have to see the bleeding start. We've done really
this simple fact means no one can rule out the possibility that Twinkle's condition is the result of something else.
The unusual bleeding. Now, as you know, other doctors have raised suspicion or question about the bleeding, and there's a term called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is
Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a rare disorder where a child's illness has been fabricated or induced by a parent.
I know that doctors
in most documented cases, that parent is the mother.
And that's why I asked each of you whether this was bleeding that either of you caused, and you told me it wasn't. I trust you. I believe you. But many other doctors haven't believed you and aren't going to until we can actually see the bleeding ourselves start without anybody causing it. That would convince people that you don't have that problem. But I or another doctor like myself needs
Dr.
to see
Buchanan
what happens
is offering Nandini and Twinkle a ray of hope.
So I think the best thing, ideally, would be for us to observe Twinkle for a period of time, 24 hours a day, so that we can see the bleeding start. Might be difficult to arrange and to do, but I will try very hard to see if we can do that.
It's an offer that Nandini is happy to accept.
जब होगा तो मुझे कैसे पता चलेगा कि इन्होंने सब कुछ अरेंज कर लिया?
Well, you and I are going to stay in contact, and we'll have to work out a means to do that. But we will be in contact, and I will try to make those arrangements.
ठीक है.
It's the news they've both been waiting for.
मैंने कहा कि हमको तुम्हारे ऊपर या तुम्हारी मम्मी पर भरोसा है. ऐसा किसी ने नहीं कहा था. जॉर्ज ने कहा है.
Even Twinkle is seeing the bright side.
जैसे जॉर्ज डॉक्टर ने कहा कि हम एकदम ठीक हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा कि स्कूल जाना चाहिए, तो मतलब स्कूल जाना चाहिए। स्कूल जाएंगे मजाक बनेगा।
अच्छा ठीक है, स्कूल गई, वहाँ सब बच्चों ने तुमको ऐसे कहा, क्या है तुम्हारी तो तबीयत भी नहीं ठीक है, तुम्हारा तो खून निकला, तुम स्कूल चली आई, तो तुम क्या कहोगी सबसे?
कहेंगे मुझे पढ़ाई से मतलब कि तुम लोग की बकवास सुनने की टाइम नहीं मेरे पास।
Unless Twinkle's bleeding can be observed as it begins, there'll always be the suspicion that her tears of blood are somehow faked. Until then, Dr. Buchanan can only speculate as to the cause.
It's heart versus head because I really very much admire this young lady and her mother and trust them and see a very healthy relationship between the two. My heart tells me that this really is truly something that I've never seen before. My head tells me as a physician scientist that in fact Munchausen syndrome by proxy is the most likely diagnosis. But I'm going to keep an open mind at this point.
Until Dr. Buchanan can arrange for the 24/7 monitoring of Twinkle in a sleep lab back home, her case will remain a mystery.
In the heart of India lives an extraordinary girl. Jyoti Amge is turning 16 with the same dreams and passions as her teenage peers, but she's only the size of a 6-month-old baby. Her tiny body is fragile, and she suffers with broken legs that won't heal on their own. To restore her ability to walk, she and her protective parents face an agonizing dilemma: trust her care to modern medicine or believe in the power of traditional healing. It's a decision that will impact the rest of her life. This is Jyoti Amge. She's a typical teenager with an eye for jewelry, clothes, and adventure. Except that at only 23.5 inches tall, Jyoti is the smallest girl in the world. From birth, she has lived with a rare condition that has severely stunted her growth.
मैं जब उनको अपनी उम्र बताती, मैं 16 साल की हूँ, मैं 15, तो यकीन ही नहीं आता उनको।
No matter what challenges life presents, Jyoti faces them with determination and an enchanting smile. She has big plans and is dedicated to building a future for herself. Her story begins almost 16 years ago in the city of Nagpur. Situated at the geographical center of India and home to over 4 million people, it is a thriving center of trade where modern India evolves side by side with old traditions. The Amge family lives in a quiet suburb to the east of the city. When Ranjana became pregnant in 1993, she was already the mother of 4 healthy children. But this time she knew instinctively that something wasn't right.
I had a checkup, and the doctor thought